We appreciate you guys coming out today. I want you to meet two guys who performed a pretty heroic act last night. And as a result of that, we have someone who is probably alive today as a result of it. The two officers that you see behind me were out flying last night. They got a call about an airplane in distress. The airplane impacted the ground. These officers, pilot Dave Dennison and the tactical flight officer Brian Gentry, landed the helicopter in proximity to the aircraft that was on fire. Flight officer Gentry exited the helicopter and proceeded to pull the victim out of the wreckage and pull him to safety to get him away from a possible aircraft that might explode. It was an amazing act of aviation. It was an amazing act of bravery. It is indicative of the men and women that serve in this great department. These guys will probably tell you that they were just doing their jobs. And indeed, that is true. But how they do their jobs and how quickly they responded and the professionalism with which they reacted in an emergency situation probably saved the life of that pilot. It was an amazing act. And I can't tell you how proud I am of them. They're going to tell you it was no big deal. To that pilot, it was a very big deal. And to that pilot's family, it was a very big deal. And as a result of the actions of these two officers, there is somebody who is alive today. So let me start out by introducing the pilot of the aircraft, pilot Dave Dennison. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. My name is Dave Dennison. I'm one of the pilots of Tampa Police Aviation. As you guys have been briefed, last night we were on routine patrol, out flying around, helping our street units with calls for service. And during that time, I heard over the Tampa International Control Tower radio frequencies a pilot that to me sounded like he was in distress. His voice was a little stressed. There seemed like he had a couple of things going on. My partner, who was handling the police side of our operation, I brought him online on that radio and said, hey, let's listen to this, let's start heading that direction. As I started closing the distance, we were coming from South Tampa area when this occurred. And as we were closing the distance to him, the incident sounded like it was continuing to digress to a level that we thought there was going to be a crash. Brian Gentry, who operates the camera on board and who handles a lot of the police side of what we do, brought the camera online, put the camera on the aircraft. We were able to acquire him, which is a pretty hard thing to do if you're looking at an overall sky picture at night and you're trying to find something as small as a Cessna 210. As he was able to locate that aircraft, we watched that aircraft and subsequently watched him crash. When we came in, we saw there was a little post-crash fire. We knew the pilot hadn't exited the aircraft. If you listen to the radio tapes, I was pretty preoccupied with talking to air traffic control, getting my clearances to cross the runways and to proceed to the crash site. Brian and I have worked together for multiple years. We've been a flight crew together for going on 6 years. There's not a lot of communication between us. He had his side of the job that was going on. We were doing ours. We were trying to get assets, both fire rescue and our assets, to the scene. And at one point, the only thing you hear me tell Brian is, I said, I'm putting you on the ground. As I came in onto the scene, I realized we were going to be able to respond and be there to provide aid prior to the fire department was. They were close, but they still had a little bit of a response time. As we came in, made our approach, we placed our aircraft on the ground. Officer Gentry exited our aircraft and commenced the rest of the rescue. We have a shutdown procedure that we utilize with the helicopter to sustain the turbine engine. I can't just turn the helicopter off and jump out and run after him and assist him. As I tried to expedite our shutdown procedure, I brought the camera, who was still online. I looked up and we were still recording, we were still downlinking. Not knowing what was going to happen with it, I tried to bring the camera online to the actual scene of the aircraft and continue to roll some type of footage. And as soon as I reached my parameters of being able to shut down the aircraft, I shut down the aircraft and exited our aircraft and assist Officer Gentry. So that, like the mayor said, that is one of the things, it's just what we do. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things that we're involved in that the public doesn't ever get to be a part of, that the media doesn't ever get to be a part of, and a lot of those things are negative. and this happened to be a positive thing. Especially close to Christmas time like this. I mean, we're proud and we feel very accomplished that we were able to provide a service that normally isn't part of our duty. Part of our duty is usually assisting patrol, chasing bad guys, locating people that are missing and all that. We don't normally get to take the first responder action in a way that we did last night. But I'm very proud to be part of this police department. I think we have one of the finest aviation units in the country. And we have a lot of capabilities that last night shows that we never know when we're going to get called upon to use those. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And any questions, I'll let Brian speak and we can answer some questions for you. Thank you.
Hello, name's Brian Gentry. Dave pretty much summed it up. We're just fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right or wrong time. Basically what we did, like the mayor referred to, it's just part of the job. It's nothing that 1,000 other officers every day with TPD doing an automobile accident crash. We were just fortunate enough to have a video running, and it was something as unique as an aircraft. I think the real hero in this case is the injured pilot. He was able to take an aircraft that was no longer working for him, aviate it to a spot that was not populated, and put it down, and hopefully things work out for him. Really sums it up. There was a small fire, basically the residual from the oil and also the residual fuel that was, I'm guessing, that was remaining in the lines. It is spilled onto the engine, so we had a small fuel fire. I was able to put that out for the most part. The overall condition of the aircraft seemed to be structurally sound. Unfortunately, the first attempt to extricate him, I wasn't able to do so because the pilot side door was pinned. And at that time, I realized the fire was progressing, went back to the aircraft, grabbed the fire extinguisher. I was able to put the small fire out. Then I go to the co-pilot side or the passenger side of the aircraft, and I was able to force that door open and then remove the pilot from within.
It appeared that he was in the mode of rescuing somebody, but at the same time, I've got to believe that you're thinking to yourself, man, I really got to get this person out. I mean, kind of walk us through your emotional feelings when you first go to, as we look at the video, go lights out, can't get through, and then go to the other side. Just again, kind of walk through what you're thinking emotionally.
Yeah, it all happened so fast. Basically, I got there. Of course, you want the best for him. You see the fire. It is a little frustrating when you can't get him out of the one side of the door. I don't know what's on the other side of the aircraft. Fortunately, like I said, once I was able to go to the other side of the aircraft and the door would open, I figured, things were looking up. And yes, once I pulled him from the aircraft, he was sandwiched between the cockpit and the seat. And basically, I had to pull him out of the aircraft, which put him in some pain. And he came to enough to, like you said, assist as he's trying to push up the hill because.
Can you describe again what you had to do with the camera and how you manipulated it and touched down to focus on the scene of the accident?
Can you expand on that? I don't understand.
You mentioned something about the camera being shifted.
Oh.
Can you tell us what exactly you did there?
Well, basically, once we landed, I just let the camera has it stabilizes itself. So basically, at that point, I was just off the camera, preparing to get out, undo my harness and so forth, exit the aircraft. So it's there, just looking at the grass, and that's when, fortunately, Dave he was heads up enough to grab the camera and film the rest.
If I can direct a question to you, Dave, why did you refocus the camera to the scene of what was going on?
The way it works out here in aviation, for the most part, is all of us that are pilots, we're tactical flight officers. I spent 7 years on that side of the aircraft, with basically operating the police side of the equipment before I moved into a pilot's capacity. I had a 2-minute cool down that I had to sit through to stabilize the turbine engine to get it to where I can exit the aircraft myself. I looked over, I saw we were still recording. His control box, when he exited the aircraft and ran towards the scene, just got thrown on his seat. And I looked at the camera box and said, I'm sitting here for 2 minutes. I need to do something, kind of deal. And I couldn't help him because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to exit the aircraft and assist him pull it out, but I had to protect our asset and shut it down properly. So I decided to use his camera and continue to roll some type of usable footage.
Were you thinking at the time it might make a cool video to play on the news?
No, honestly, it was one of those, your brain, and we talked about that even on the way in. We haven't really spoke since this morning. We went home to try to get a couple hours of rest. But you look back on that, and we've worked together for so long. There wasn't a lot of communication with us. We knew what each other was going to do. And as far as the camera and continuing to use the camera is concerned, that's how I was taught. We were raised out here. Our videos are what, for one, put suspects in jail, and it helps our city look at something that they didn't see and be able to paint a picture. We all know I can sit here and tell you the story all day long, but the video is what really truly made this, something that we don't normally see every day. And that was one of the things that we were kind of uncertain as to really what level and what severity he had going on, because he didn't ask. He never asked, because Tower, I want to say at one point, does ask him, do you need to declare an emergency? And I think he makes a comment on, I'll talk to you on the ground, or, we'll speak on the ground or something like that. I don't know, and NTSB will have to answer these type of questions. I don't know what was going on inside his aircraft, but I can tell you as a pilot, we have a lot of things going on, and sometimes your body's just going off of training and your mind is continuing to fly the aircraft. That's one of the things that we always instill in pilots. No matter what's going on, continue to fly the aircraft. And I feel as though that's what he was doing. He was flying the aircraft. Maybe more focused on what was going, which is what he needed to do. I mean, if you look at the scene, he came right over the top of the Veterans Expressway, Memorial Highway. It's busy right now. We have a lot of vehicles on the road. It's Christmas time. I think he was trying to clear himself of any obstructions to speculatively not hurt anybody else on the ground. Once he asked for the ARF units, there's a portion of the tape that he tells Tower we should get the ARF units responding, that was when I knew something. Because as a pilot, we never want to call for help kind of deal. If he's asking for fire rescue, I think at that point he was uncertain, if he was going to make the runway or not. And that's when we expedited our arrival to the scene. Like I said, we were coming off of a police call. Majority of that video, and that's how good our camera systems are. You can't tell the angle and you can't tell where we were. I was doing, roughly 150 knots across the ground getting to the scene, and we started filming that video around the area of 275 and Columbus Avenue kind of deal. So I mean, we were almost 5-6 miles away from the actual plane as he was coming in. But the resolution on the camera and the zoom capabilities on the camera are just such that we were still able to see it. But no, to answer your question, when it comes to continuing to use the camera, we all, in a stressful situation, I knew I needed to be doing something. I was watching the clock, and it's always a long 2-minute cool down when we've been sitting in an aircraft and you need to exit the aircraft for whatever reason. But when you're wanting to do it to help your partner, who I was concerned is he involved in this fire. I mean, that was one of the first things. When I did, when the video cuts off, that's because I had shut everything down and I had exited. And the first thing I did is went to him and I said, "Are you okay? Are you fine?" Because I know he dealt with some of the fire and the glass and the mangled cockpit and all that. We know we need to be doing something. Your training kicks in and you just continue to move forward doing something.
Once the video shuts down, describe for us the scene once the regular fire rescue from the airport arrived.
Fire rescue responded from their facility here at the airport. You can see in the video towards some of the last frames that Brian was actually motioning to the fire rescue units to come in where we were. It was really dark under there. You hear me on my final approach. I wasn't under night vision goggles. We have night vision goggles in our aircraft and that we wear as crew. And when it came in, I came into a black hole. I couldn't see anything. We lost all the city lights. We lost all of our horizon, everything else. And you hear me tell him I'm going under goggles kind of deal. So I went under goggles. It was really dark. And I think what Brian told me later is that one of his fears was that fire rescue was going to run us over or run them over because they were away from the scene. Everybody, stress, adrenaline, everybody's trying to get to the scene. And Brian didn't want to get run over by the big fire trucks. So that's what I was trying to get to them. And we were just trying to bring the fire assets in and continue to stabilize the patient. Yes, sir. Yeah, we both fly in the same outfits we have on. We also carry a flight vest that's got some survival equipment, and also our helmets. And you can see Brian had all of that on as he was running back and forth.
Were
So.
you able to talk to the pilot?
Brian was, yeah. He, I guess he was unconscious when Brian first gained contact with them, and as he is being drug out by Brian, who's a pretty large individual. I'm glad Brian was pulling him out. The guy, I guess, regained consciousness from some of the pain that he was experiencing, and he came to. And then he ended up going back out of consciousness after he was on the ground.
What he may have said or what he communicated to you?
He really didn't say anything, said he was in pain, that his leg hurt. And I asked him a couple questions, and he said he didn't remember anything from the crash, wanted to know where he was. Honestly, no. With what I saw there, a lot of that seems to be sensationalized from Hollywood. That was just the residual fuel that was in the fuel lines, providing it wasn't able to track its way back to a leak in a fuel tank or something. I really wasn't concerned about an explosion.
In the video we see the plane crash. Did you two see it crash as well? And what did you think? Were you thinking,
No, all we saw was what you saw, the FLIR image of the heat signature going down. You also see his white landing light, which is about the same on a black background. So we don't actually see the aircraft from the distance that we were at.
What kind of challenges did the location of the crash on that embankment present in your actual rescue effort once you got on the ground?
No, very minimal. I mean, the grass was wet. Of course, it's on an embankment. It was muddy. A traction issue at most. But like I said, the pilot did an outstanding job. He got to a spot that wasn't populated. The area he was at provided us the opportunity to land. And, I mean, there were better avenues. Had he made it another 30 feet, may not be having this interview. But from where he was at, I mean, the guy did an outstanding job. Honestly, I don't know. I've been doing this job so long with automobile accidents and so forth. You never know what to expect. If he'd like to, yeah, that would be nice.
about the risk of explosion? Was the pilot's life in danger from the flames that were there and could get caught fire?
Speculation, but I mean, I assume given enough time, the fire would have backtracked to the fuel tanks.
I mean, you think your calm arrival there saved his life, or you think he would have survived because
I'd like to think so, but like I said, it's pure speculation. I don't know.
The mayor mentioned that you're probably going to downplay being called a hero. But from your words, we hear that, but we call heroes for your actions late last night. What do you say?
And like the mayor said, we were just doing our job. The real hero, as far as I'm concerned, is the pilot. He was in a bad situation, and he was able to mitigate that, any further injuries or damage to, the citizens of Tampa. He did a great job. You're trained to take that aircraft into a dark area you figure is not going to be populated, or at least not densely populated, and he puts himself in peril.
Not as proud as Chief Castor. I want the chief to come up in a second, but I mean, I got to tell you, you look at these guys and understand they're up every night. I mean, these guys are flying every night, doing things that none of us would want to do. They are such an asset to law enforcement because they are so helpful to the men and women on the ground, whether it's in pursuit of a stolen vehicle or whether it's, when our officers go into a house, not knowing whether there's a bad guy in there or not, with the floor, they can help detect that. I mean, this aviation component of TPD is a tremendous asset. And so every dollar that we spend on apparatus like this is less opportunities for our officers to get hurt and takes the guys on the street out of harm's way because they know that literally and figuratively this aviation asset has their backs, maybe their heads. But they're up there above them looking out for their fellow officers, and they do an amazing job. And I know Chief Castor is awfully proud of these two guys.
Yes, I know that they say they're trying to play this down, but Dave and Brian both do an outstanding job every day, and what they did last night was save this individual's life. There's no doubt about that. And it's the skill of the pilot and then the action on Brian's part to get in there and get this individual out. But I also want to acknowledge and underscore what the mayor said. I want to acknowledge his leadership and allowing us to keep this aviation unit. During the economic downturn, there are countless agencies across the nation that had to do away with aviation units because they are very expensive. But it is an amazing and invaluable asset to the men and women of the Tampa Police Department. I can't tell you how many times they have, as the mayor said, saved an officer's, I would use a different part of the anatomy, but he said had their backs. But how many times from up in the air they can let officers know what's going on. And then the public as well. They're able to prevent pursuits, vehicle pursuits that put the community in danger, just any number of tasks that they perform up in the air to keep the officers and the community safe. And last night, they were in the right place at the right time, and they had the skills and the equipment necessary to do what needed to be done. And I could not be prouder, not only of these two officers, but of the entire aviation unit and all the men and women of the Tampa Police Department that put their lives on the line every day to keep our community safe. So very, very proud.
We understand that it's not your investigation. Once you did what you did, you were finished with it. If you'd like to whisper to us, however, and we promise
You won't tell anybody?
you identify the pilot. Does anyone know who he is? Do you know who he was?
I haven't.
You don't know?
I haven't identified him.
Do you know?
No, sir. We've been asleep for the past several hours. You know more than we do.
And that's what you don't have to whisper to.
That's another mystery that's solved. Heroes actually do sleep. So, all right.
you guys do when this was done? What happened after?
Yeah, we actually we're on our shift till 6 o'clock in the morning. Believe it or not, we just went back to work like we would any other night. It was honestly just another call for us. We assisted Tampa Fire as much as we could at the scene. Once the scene was stabilized, we brought ourselves back available in service and continued to respond to calls for service for the police department.
How long were you there?
We were there on the ground from the time of the actual wreckage for about 2 hours. My helicopter was actually pinned in by several large fire trucks, and I couldn't take off until they knew the fire was out and until the scene was secure. The way it came in, the way I landed into there, we were pretty close to the wreckage. Brian says we were probably about 20 yards from the actual wreckage from the point of where my touchdown was. So as all of the fire department's apparatuses came in to continue to foam the aircraft and to make sure that whatever fire was there was totally extinguished, we were kind of pinned in for a little while.
And once you were off the ground, did you have any other exciting moments during the night with like your family?
No, actually, it was kind of just a routine night after that, luckily. So we were, when these kind of things happen mentally, you're exhausted. You kind of go through that adrenaline, that rush and high and low. And after that, we kind of debriefed the incident. What could we have done differently? Is there anything that we could have done better or more efficiently? And we pretty much answered all of those, questions with a no. And, after that, like I said, it's him and I have, Brian and I have been a partner and a crew as a flight crew for a long time. There wasn't a lot that honestly was said during the incident for us. We both know what needed to happen. We knew that we were going to be the first asset on scene, and I didn't even ask him. You hear me on the tape say, "I'm putting you on the ground," and when I told him that, I was 200 feet off the deck and I was coming in. And as soon as I was, had the aircraft safely on the ground, he was gone. And honestly, I didn't see him again until we shut down the aircraft and I helped him with the patient at that point. So it was just a routine night after that for us.
Can you describe again, just for perspective, what was it like when you turned the camera on in the dark conditions and you said you spotted that Cessna for the first time? What was it like trying to spot that in the dark from 5 or 6 miles away? What is that like?
It's pretty hard. He actually did an amazing job on it. With if he wasn't, we have several different functions of our camera, and if he wasn't in our infrared, which you guys know as FLIR kind of deal, which is detecting heat. The heat that you're seeing is actually from the engine block, from the aircraft. If he wouldn't have been in that function of the camera, he probably wouldn't have found it, because it's a one single light looking on a big horizon at night. Like I said, we were probably 5 or 6 miles away at the time, responding to the scene. And I was looking for it visually. He was looking for it under the camera, and then when he acquired it, obviously we were able to maintain sight of it. But that's pretty hard. He's probably one of the best tactical flight officers that I've ever worked with and that I know of in the country. I did that side of the job for about 7 years before I became a pilot. It's a hard job to grasp. It's one that a lot of people think that the pilot is really doing all the work. I don't. I really work for him. I work for him until I take him where he needs to go, get him there, and try to get us back safely. The observers in our aircraft are truly what does the job for the police department, for the city, for everything else. He's the one that, he's calling to the officers, like the mayor had said, if there's somebody that is hiding from them that could possibly injure them as they're, finding that person in the perimeter. He sees that before it happens. So what they do in keeping things going, it's a pretty tight cockpit. You guys, will be free to look inside the aircraft. We have a lot going on in there. And for him to be able to do that, to keep it on camera, with everything that was going on, like I said, when you fly together with somebody for so long, there is a lot of things that just go unsaid. I know he's doing what he needs to do. He knows me enough that I'm going to put him on the ground. That was one, as I got close to it and I realized where it was, I knew I had a safe landing zone. I wasn't going to sit there and do our normal orbits above it and continue to video it. I knew this was a rare case that we were going to actually be able to play a role in this rescue, and that's simply what you hear on the video. I told him, Brian, I'm putting you on the ground, and I got a simple Roger from him. That's him acknowledging me that I heard you, I understand you, and let's do it. So that was it. I'm sorry.
I know how we put Eagle 8 on the platform, which is slow in general. You want to make sure that it's there. And we've also all seen Black Hawk landing.
It was more of a Black Hawk landing and a combat zone landing. I knew I saw the fire. I was under goggles, which intensifies any light that we can see. I saw there was a fire. Brian's kind of downplaying that. Yeah, I was overly concerned for him. That this aircraft was going to explode or continue to burn or whatever the case may be. When we came in pretty hard and fast. All I made sure is that I didn't have anything on my path path of flight that was going to obstruct me or hit the helicopter as I landed it. And once I knew I had a safe approach into there, I tried to get him on the ground and somebody to this guy as soon as we possibly could. So definitely. As fast as I could put it on the ground, I did. So.
Was there a concern that you were going to get in the way of some big airplanes?
No, we have a great relationship with Tampa International Airport. And it's kind of one of those, we've done this in the past where, this happens every now and then where a plane might declare an emergency. Brian and I, as a flight crew, we've watched this happen several times, and 99% of the time the pilot makes the runway and, whew, that was scary, and let's go on about life. But the relationship that we have with the Tampa International is they know the mission that we're doing is not a recreational pilot flying around, sightseeing. I mean, we're actually conducting a role in what's going on out there. So if I ask for priority treatment or if I ask to be expedited on a departure or something like that, they've always worked excellent with us. I think he realized when I was coming in that that happened, I think same thing, he knew what I was going to do. The same controllers, I talked to those guys on a nightly basis, and I think he realized I wanted into that scene. I wanted to be close to that scene, pretty quickly. We have 2 parallel runways, which is where the airliners land on Tampa International, and where this incident occurred versus where I was coming from possibly the worst angle I could have been coming to cross those runways and get to the scene. If you look at the footage when we're coming in on the ground, he actually launched I believe it was a Southwest jet right behind me kind of deal. As soon as I cleared that runway, he had a departure that was already on the roll. But no, they let us pretty much do what we need to do, and have always helped us and have always been there to support our mission, because they know we're actually out trying to use our aircraft in a way that a lot of people don't use aviation assets. So
You have, there's a shorter east-west runway. Is that where it was?
Yes, sir. No, it was actually right on the corner of Hillsborough and like Memorial area, Hillsborough and the Veterans Expressway. It was kind of on that northwestern quadrant of the airport. Some of the maps that I'd seen this morning, the map wasn't showing the crash site and exactly where it happened. We were only about, and that's what I was talking about, and like Brian was talking about too, when it came to the true hero, we think's the pilot. He had Hillsborough Avenue with, we all know the vehicle flow and the traffic flow of Hillsborough Avenue, and he was 30 yards from Hillsborough Avenue on the back side of that fence. So he was trying to, like all of us, if we're going to have to put one on the ground in an emergency situation, we don't want to hurt anybody else in the process. So I think that was what he was thinking as a fellow pilot. I think he was, let me put this aircraft somewhere that, I'm not going to hurt anybody else and is going to be as clear of an area to land as I can.
Was he on the alignment though for that?
No, sir. No, sir, he wasn't. That runway runs north and south, and Tower had cleared him to run on the south side of that runway, which is referred to 19 right, and he was coming in straight west. So as he was coming in, he was coming from west to east. He would have at some point had to make a pretty aggressive 90-degree turn to line himself up with that runway. So
That's how he ended up in the ground.
yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.